tutorial is going to be how to knit this bucket hat. If you're a beginner knitter, this tutorial is perfect for you. It'll cover all of the basics such as knitting in the round, decreasing, increasing, and stitching a double folded brim. As you can see, we've got this circular head shape and then we've got a fold along here. We've double folded it to create this seam on the inside here, just so that brim is a little bit more thicker and more structured. We knit this from the top and work our way down, and we finish on the inside as well. And it fits a head circumference of 54 centimeters, but it also has a little bit of stretch as well. Let's try her on so you can get an idea of what she looks like when you're wearing it. This is what she'll look like on, so I'm going to take you through all of the steps to knit this for yourself. I knit this in about 3 days, and that was only a couple hours a night, so I promise it's super quick, super easy. If you're a beginner, this is the project for you. Let's get started on the tutorial. I'll go through the yarn, needles, other accessories that you'll need, and then we'll get straight into the pattern. Let's talk about yarn and needles. So the yarn that I'll be using are two of the fluffiest, softest yarns I've ever seen. I know these are different colors, but I really love how they go together. This is going to be a very contrast color type of hat, so I'm going to combine these. So this one here, which is so soft, I just got at my local John Lewis, and it is the Mode at Rowan Softest Alpaca. It's 50 grams at 130 meters. This is in the color 019, so it's a light blue. 70% alpaca, 7% wool, 23% recycled nylon. I love knitting with alpaca. It is so soft, and it's this sort of like soft blow type yarn, so it's very light, very airy, goes well with a lot of other yarns. And then I'm pairing it with the Chunky Ballerina Mohair by Sandnes Garn. This is in the color 5845. It's like this electric blue. And then this one's made out of, it's 77% mohair, 18% wool, 5% poly. Those are the two yarns that I'm going to be adding together. This is going to be such a warm, chunky hat. Your head is going to love it. And then to knit them together, I'm going to use a 6.5mm circular needle, because we will be knitting this in the round, so you definitely need to go circular. My circular needles, I think, are the 80 centimeter size. Preferably you'll want to go maybe a 40, something less than this. Otherwise you will be using the magic loop or traveler loop, which is fine if you're confident using those methods. I'm going to show you how I use it and how I make these work. So it's not necessary to get a cable that is shorter than this. You can definitely make whatever you have work for you. And then the other things you'll need are, of course, some stitch markers and a darning needle to weave in all of your ends. Let's get started. The first thing we want to do is knit our gauge swatch to check our tension. So we're going to cast on 14 stitches, and we're going to knit 20 rows in stockinette stitch, and that should give us a swatch of 10 by 10 centimeters. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 12, 13, 14. And then I'm going to tie this in a knot just to keep that more secure. And then I'm going to flip this around. So for our first stitch, right needle left to right through our stitch, through the back, wrap our yarn around, pull it through and off. Again, that's right needle over the left, through that stitch left to right, out the back, wrap our yarn around it, pull that stitch through and off. that's our first row complete. And we are going to purl this side. So keeping our yarn in front, right needle, right to left, our yarn goes up and over, and we pull that loop through and off. So again, that is our right needle. Keep it in front, right to left, in front. Our yarn wraps up and over, and then we pull that loop through and off. So that's 2 rows done. We want to do 20 in total, so we're going to repeat this 18 more times. Okay, I've done my 20 rows, so now I'm going to bind off my swatch. So I'm going to knit 2 stitches, and then with my left needle go into that first stitch, bring it up and over my second stitch like that, and then I'll knit 1 more, and again bring the first stitch over and continue. Here's the finished swatch after we've blocked it. So we'll measure it here. We're at 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters. So that's our swatch. Now we can start our piece. So I've got my 2 strands of yarn. The first thing we're going to do is cast on 8 stitches onto our needle. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2, 4, 6, 8. Perfect. And then I'm going to just tie these 2 strands in a knot for extra security. Okay, so we've got our stitches cast on. This next part is really tricky, but we want to join these in the round, and because we're working on big needles, we're going to have to be a bit clever with how we do this. So what I'm going to do is try and load my last 2 stitches onto my other needle, but I'm going to pull, so I'm going to pull them to the end, separate them out, and then pull my loop through and get those other 2 stitches onto my other needle, and keep 6 on my first needle, like that. Like that. It's a little bit tricky, but we want to keep these right at the tip. There. And then to join these in the round, we want to swap these last 2 stitches with each other. So I'm going to pop this stitch on this needle, and then that other stitch on the right needle over onto my left needle. So those are swapped, and that will join in the round. So now we can knit these. You'll want to grab a stitch marker to mark the start of your round, And the first thing we're going to do is knit all of these stitches. So we're knitting our first round. So I'm going to grab my yarn, my working yarn here. And we want to bring these stitches around onto the other side. So you'll want to keep moving those loops around and through the cords again. This is called the magic loop method. It's really tricky. It'll get easier once we have more stitches on our needles. Okay, I've finished that round. Go back to the start and pull my needle through. It's very, very finicky, so it is definitely going to feel like a slow start. That is totally fine. So I'm back at the start of my round. So this next round, we're going to knit one stitch, make one stitch. So because we want to double the amount of stitches we have on our needles. So I am going to pull my right needle out of these just so I have more range of motion. I'm going to move my stitch marker across because we are on our second round now. And I'm going to knit my first stitch like normal, and then we are going to make a stitch. So what we want to do is look at the bar, the horizontal bar that is in between those two stitches. So it will be this in here, that's in between one column and this column here. So I'm going to grab that bar with my right needle, pop it on top of my left needle, and it goes over the front that way. And then I'm going to knit this through the back. So I'm going to find the back opening. It can be a bit tricky. You can sometimes scoop your needle in through the front like that, and then twist your needles in order so it flicks to the back. And then you can pull your yarn through. Like that. And that's how we make a stitch. So now we will knit our next stitch like normal, and you'll do that until you complete the round. You can kind of see that that stitch becomes twisted like that. You want it to cross over so that you don't have any gaps. And that's it. We've finished making our stitches for that row. So you should have 16 stitches across your needles now. This is what it will look like once you've completed that first round of knit one, make one. Now we're going to knit the next round completely normal without making any. I'm going to split this in half. So we'll knit this round as normal. So by using this method, you're pretty much knitting your round in halves. So I'll load my other half and then pull my working needle out so I've got mobility. I'll keep knitting this round. Okay, that's that round complete. I'm back to where my stitch marker is. So I'm going to pop that over again. So that's our knitted round. We should still have 16 stitches on our needles. Now we want to do some increases again, but not as steep as the first time we did it. So instead of knitting one, making one, we're going to knit two and then make one. So I'm going to load this side up. And pull my working needle out again. And I'm going to knit two. 1, 2, and now I'll make one. Like that. And we'll complete this round. We're on our last make one. There we go. So we finished that round because I'm back to my stitch marker. So here we should have 24 stitches on our needles now. And now, same as before, we'll knit the next round as per normal. Okay, so I've just finished my knit to make one round and then I've done my knit round. So let's have a look at our progress so far. It should be looking like this. You can kind of see a bit of a circle is starting, and that's going to be the top of the bucket hat. We're going to keep expanding on this circle now. So you're going to repeat all of those same steps, but every time you're on an increase round, you'll do an extra knit stitch before you do your increase. So for example, we already did the knit one, make one, and then we did a knit round. And then the next increasing round, we did a knit two, make one, then we knitted the round. So for our third increase round, we're going to knit three, then make one, then knit the round in full, and then knit four and make one, and then knit the whole round through. So you're doing your increases every second round, and each one of those increase rounds, you're going to knit an extra stitch before you do your make one. And we're going to do that until we get up to knit 7, make one. And then you'll want to finish on that round, and then we'll start working on the body of the hat. Also, don't worry about the little hole that we have there. When we weave in our ends, we are going to close that even tighter. So don't worry if you've got a little bit of a loose hole at the top, that's fine. We will take care of that later. Okay, I'm coming up to the very last few stitches on my knit 7, make one round. 5, 6, 7, and then I'm going to make one. Like that. This is what it should be looking like so far. We've got a nice little circle diameter. So this is our crown, and we should have 64 stitches. So you can go ahead and count that just to make sure that that's all correct. Everything should equal up perfectly. So your last make one should be just before the end of your round. So you'll just come back to the stitch marker. If you haven't, then you've probably miscalculated somewhere. If you have miscalculated, that's okay. You can modify and amend. Just make an increase or a decrease on your next knit round to get to 64 stitches. We'll also measure our diameter as well, and it should be about 14 centimeters. From one side to the other. So we're just within that. Perfect. Now that we've finished our knit 7, make one, that's the crown finished. So now we can start working on the body. So for this, we're not going to do any more increases. We just want to keep adding rows to this, and we want to extend another 10 centimeters. So to do this, I'm gonna just pop a stitch marker on my stitch in this last row, on the stitch, so it stays locked in on the project, not on the cord. I'm gonna pop it in here, and so I'll know to measure 10 centimeters out from this point here. So keep knitting in the round as is with no increases until we have 10 centimeters worked for the body. Okay, you can see here our update is we have knit around and around in stockinette, and you can see that the curve is taking shape. So from that stitch marker we placed, let's check how far we've knitted it. And that is exactly 10 centimeters. So now we can start working on our brim, but first let's try it on just to make sure that everything is fitting nicely. Ooh, so chic. This actually could maybe be a look. So our crown and our body section is complete. Now we're going to work on the brim. One thing that I'm going to do before we start our brim is I'm going to get a few stitch markers and I'm going to just disperse them around a few of the stitches on this last row, and that is just so that when we finish our brim, we're going to do a double fold and fold it under, and we're going to stitch that inside edge to the body here. And so I'm going to put stitch markers in on this row so that I can keep track of which row to stitch them into, just so I'm not stitching them into different rows. It'll just help us try and keep track of stitching it onto the same row so that it's straight. You don't have to do this, but if you want to be like extra vigilant about it, you want them to sit on the inside as well. So I'm gonna pop these stitch markers in and make sure that they're facing that way as I knit around. There we go, I've got my little stitch markers just dispersed throughout that last row so that when we do the brim and we fold it over, I can then easily track which row to stitch everything into, so that it's consistent all the way around. So now we'll start on the brim. Now we're going to start working on our brim. So we've got all of our stitch markers to help us keep track of where this row is in our work. We're going to start a new round. So I'm going to place this stitch marker on my needle so we can travel it around. And I'm going to load up this side. Okay, so this first round we are going to knit 6 stitches and then make 1 stitch. So it'll be the same technique as when we were doing our crown increases. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we'll make a stitch, knitting it through the back like so. We'll knit 6 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This will be our 6th. When you get to a stitch marker, you just want to flip it so it ends up being on the purl side of the work. So this will be 6, and then we'll make 1. Again, just keep that stitch marker out of the way. Six more, and so on. Once you go around all your stitch markers, you'll see that they just sit on the inside and they'll be out of the way. We won't need to look at these again until we fold our brim in. So from here, you'll just want to keep following the pattern in terms of which rounds you do your increases on. So if we count this as round 1 and we've done a knit 6, make 1 in that round, that'll be the first round. The next 2 rounds we will knit just normally, and then your 4th round you will do a knit 7, make 1, and then the 2 rounds after that, so rounds 5 and 6, you will knit as normal with no increases, And then for your 7th round, you will do another knit 7, make 1 round, so the same as the last increasing round. And then for rows 8 and 9, you will knit them as normal, no increases. And then we'll be at the end of our brim, ready to start working on the fold. Okay, here's where we're up to now that we've done all of our increases. You can see it's starting to curve out for the brim there. And now we're going to work on the fold to create the double cuff. If you don't want to do a double fold, you can just finish your work here and bind off, and that's your bucket hat. But if you want to do the double cuff, then follow the next steps. So now that we've done our increases for the brim, we want to fold these over, but because where we're folding it to has less stitches than at the end, we actually need to reverse what we've done and decrease back to the same number of stitches we started with, just so that when we do fold everything, it all is aligned in here and it's not bunched. So what we're going to do is knit the same number of rows and do decreases as well. So you should have 96 stitches at this point. We are going to knit the same number of rows and do decreases instead of increases all the way back until we get back to 64 stitches. But before we do that, we want to add one more row, and we actually want to do a purl row. These are all knit stitches. We want to do a row of purls just so when we do our fold for that edge, we have a purl edge along the brim here. And that just A, makes it easier to fold, B, makes sure that our fold line is even all the way around, and also it just reinforces it a little bit and gives us a bit of a decorative edge as well. So I'm going to purl this next row. So to purl this row, we want our work facing right side up, and we are going to purl by having our yarn in front, and we want to purl just the one round. Here's what it'll look like after the one round. And this will essentially help reinforce the fold for the double brim. Now for this next round, we will go back to just doing a round of knits. So no decreases, we just want to knit one round as normal. Once we've done that round, for the second knit round, we'll do our decreases here. We are going to do a knit 6 and then knit 2 together. So that's 1 stitch, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we will knit the next 2 together as if they are 1 stitch. Just like that. And we'll do that to complete the round. So knit 6 and then knit 2 together. At the end of this decrease round, you should have reduced your stitches from 96 down to 84 stitches. So double check that you've got that right. If not, you can modify it on the next round. If you've missed one, just do a decrease somewhere in your next knit round. But if you're all good with 84 stitches, you can knit your next 2 rounds as normal with no decreases. So now I'm coming to the end of my 2 knit only rows. So this next row is going to be another decrease row. We're going to knit 5 and then knit 2 together for this row. So we'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we'll knit these next 2 stitches together through both loops, just like that. We'll do 5 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, knit 2 together, and we will do that until we complete the round. Once you get to the end of that decrease round, you should have 72 stitches left on your needle, so feel free to go around and check that, and then you will do another 2 rounds of just knitting with no decreases. Okay, we've done that last round of stockinette stitch, and now we're up to our next and final round of decreases. So we should have 72 stitches on our needles. We want to get it down to 64. So for this round of decreases, we'll do a knit 7, knit 2 together. So I'm going to load my left needle again. I'm going to pull my loop through somewhere back here. So I'm going to put my stitch marker back on. And now we're going to do a knit 7, knit 2 together. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then we'll knit these next 2 together. Like that. And then we'll do another 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Knit these 2 together. I'm now at my last decrease for this row. These last 2 stitches. There we go. I'm back at the start of my round. We should have 64 stitches on your needles now, so feel free to count them to make sure your piece matches. But now for our last row, we want to do one more round of just straight knits. No decreases, none of that. So we'll do one more round of knits and then we'll be ready to do our bind off. Okay, we are coming to the end of our last row. There we go. I'm going to pull my needles out. I'm going to take my stitch marker off as well. So now, if you turn your work right side up, you'll be able to see that we have got a lovely purl line here, which will become our fold, and the distance between where our stitch markers were, where we started our increases, and where we've done our decreases should now be the same length. So essentially what we're going to do now is fold this in so the purl line is perfectly out here, and we are going to bind this off and stitch this into the inside. So I'm going to turn this inside out. So if you look closely at our inside, you can see the back of where we purled. So these will be knit stitches in here. But you can see that little ridge, and that's where our fold is going to be. So we're going to fold our outer edge up and stitch these along where we placed our stitch markers, roughly thereabouts. So what you'll want to do is identify 2 things. The first thing being where your jog is. So if we look really closely, you'll be able to see where our jog is, which is where the start of our round is. And you can see that it's here because you can see that there's a little jog there. So this column here is going to be where we start. And we'll use our stitch marker as a guide for the row. However, because we attached our stitch marker to the knitted stitch side, it actually kind of sits in between 2 rows. So the purl stitch you'll want to choose is the one above that stitch marker. So you can kind of see that the stitch is half a step. It's sort of in between 2 purl rows. So pick the purl that is sitting just above the stitch marker. The second thing you want to do is identify which purls to stitch into. So some of our purls, if you look really closely, you can see some of them have a U shape and then some of them have a down shape. So we can call these smiles for the U shape and then rainbows for the upside down U shape. and we want to stitch into the rainbows. So this one here is a rainbow because you can kind of see it curves down. This one next to it is a smile. We want to knit into all rainbow stitches, okay? So once we've found that purl, I'm going to just mark it with a darning needle so I don't lose it. We're going to fold up our brim, and then we are going to pop that purl stitch onto our needle, and we want to pop it over so that the right leg is in front, so that it looks like how a normal stitch sits. The right leg of it is facing us and the left leg is at the back of the needle. Then we'll move our working yarn to the back, and we're going to knit into our stitch from the brim and that purl stitch we've brought on. We're going to knit into those together. You don't want to knit this too tight. Keep it loose if you can. So pull a bit of extra yarn and off. You can swap your right needle for a bigger size if you want to make sure that you're keeping it loose. And then we want to grab the next rainbow shaped purl stitch along that row. It's a little bit tricky to see, but you can kind of see the previous purl stitch will pull on the next purl stitch, so you can kind of see which one it'll be, and it's this one here. So we're going to scoop that one up, and again, right leg in front, pop it onto our left needle. We'll move our yarn to the back and we'll knit into both of those stitches. Like that. And then when I've got 2 stitches on my right needle, I'm now going to bind this off by grabbing my left needle, sticking it into that first stitch that we did, holding the second stitch with my finger so it doesn't slip off, bring the first stitch over the second stitch and off. So you'll want to keep repeating those steps of finding your rainbow purls, popping them on your working needle, and then stitching them together and then binding off as you go. Here is what the hat looks like once you've started to attach a few stitches. You can see that there is a ridge line on the outside. You can see those purl stitches are sitting nicely at the edge. So keep attaching your edge to the seam inside using the stitch markers as a guide. Now you'll want to remove the stitch markers as you go, because otherwise they might get lost and stuck inside. So now we're coming to the end and we're on our very last bind off stitch. I'm going to lift this over and then I'm going to cut my thread and pull my yarn through. And now using a darning needle, I'm going to start weaving in my ends. So with this strand, I'm going to just weave this into where I did my bind off. I'm just wrapping it around the knit stitches and then pulling it through and then trimming it down as well. And then the only other loose end I had was at the crown. So on the inside of the hood, I am just going to weave this into stitches in the opposite directions to sort of enclose that hole a little bit more. So I'm just picking a stitch on the opposite side and kind of going in like a star-shaped motion. So after you've weaved in all your ends, I'm going to give this a trim. And now we are pretty much finished. Here's how it looks once all complete. You can see that we've got a nice bucket hat shape. Our top is curved really nicely. And we have a lovely thick stretchy brim. Okay, final reveal. Here she is, your finished bucket hat. Super cozy, super fuzzy. Let's quickly try her on. So how you wear it is up to you. You can either like pull it down so it fits you more like a beanie would, and you've got your brim here to help cover and shield your eyes. So that kind of fits more like a beanie. But if you want it to be more like a classic bucket hat, you don't have to pull it down as much. We can just pull it up, flatten the top a little bit like that, and you've got your classic bucket hat. By binding off that seam really loosely, you can see that we've got a little bit of stretch in here. If you've done it too tight, you won't have that stretch, which is why it's important to do that bind off as loose as you can. And then you can finesse any shaping when you block the piece. Just be careful of stretching the seam that we joined around here, because if you stretch it too much, you're not going to have it like fit around your head very well. It's going to be a little bit loose. So just be careful not to stretch this too much. that's it. I hope this tutorial helped you create your very own bucket hat. I hope you love it. Please send me pictures of your piece. Leave me a review. I would really appreciate it. But thanks so much for watching. Bye.